Hi, everyone. I am so excited to have you join us today with my very good friend, Derick Van Ness. As you know, I have been talking him up at the last couple of webinars because I've been so excited about this presentation. I had the great pleasure of meeting Derick several months ago, and let me just say that it was life-changing. He's pretty amazing, and his philosophy on life is follow what you love, do what you love, figure out how to make money at what you love. And money should never stop you from living a very big life, which is probably why he named his company Big Life Financial. But anyway, I could gush about him for the entire hour that we have, but I'm going to stop, turn it over to Derick, and let him share his wisdom with all of you today. Thank you so much for being here today, Derick.
I'm really happy to, Christy. I appreciate you inviting me, and I'm excited to be here. I mean, I love docs and have been working with them with y'all for, I don't know, over a decade now. And what I love about docs is that you're passionate, intelligent, capable people who are really out there doing things that make the world a better place to be. And what I like to do is work with docs on helping to create financial certainty. Because one of the things that I have found about docs is that you're really smart with the human body and everything, but the 15 minutes of business training you got in Chiro school might not be enough to run a business effectively. And almost nobody's teaching us, what do you do with your money and how do you grow it? How do you actually build wealth? Because I think a lot of docs are good at making money, not so good at keeping it, not so good at growing it. So I'm here to share some things today that will help fix that. And I want you to know that by the end of this thing, you're going to walk away with an understanding of a completely different way to look at money and finances than you may have ever seen before. And if that sounds familiar, it's because I think that what we do for financial strategy is very similar to what you do for helping people get healthy, right? There's a system out there right now that's being taught about what being healthy looks like, and a lot of that is the medical model, right? That's what people see on TV, that's what the commercials are, and we like to approach it completely differently, just like you do. You have a holistic approach about how to help people get healthy, and that starts with the root, not just with the symptoms, right? What's causing everything to happen, and how does that roll into someone's health? We do the same thing financially. We're not just looking at some end result. We're looking at the root cause of building wealth, building financial certainty, how to create a life that you love, and how to pass that on to the people that you know in your life, because we know that legacy is a big thing for a lot of our clients. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to start with a little bit of financial philosophy that might mirror what you think about when you think about health philosophy, and that's why we love working with docs. But I want to show you a specific system that we have found to be completely different than what's being taught in the mainstream media, but really works well for docs, and you guys get it. So without further ado, I'm going to kind of dig into this. I'm new on this whiteboard, but we're going to start with some fundamental stuff. So the first thing I want to talk about is your number one asset, okay? And when most of us think of assets, we think of our house, our car, maybe our family, something like that. I'm here to say that when we think about assets, and when I'm talking about the biggest asset in your life, it's you, right? And the reason I say that it's you is because you are what creates the amount of money that happens in your life, right? The better you are with money, the more capable you are as a business person or as a doc, the more money that you have to work with. But that also rolls into your relationships, right? Who you are and who you bring to the table in those relationships is going to determine their quality. And then, of course, you guys know this, you and who you are determines a lot about your health. And if you're wondering, this is a very, very healthy stick man, right? But what we know is these are all the symptoms, all the outcomes, but they're all coming from you as the asset. Now, nobody ever teaches you this financially because, well, they don't have a product to sell you if you believe this, right? So if you haven't heard this before, you probably stop and think about it. Hopefully it makes a little bit of sense to you. Okay. So the next thing I want to be clear about and talk about philosophically is your number one investment. Okay. And when I say your number one investment, I mean, where's the bulk of your wealth going to be created in your lifetime? Now, most people, when they think about this, they think maybe the stock market, maybe some investment real estate, maybe some of these other things that they're doing out there with their money. Cryptocurrency was popular, other kinds of things. But I'm here to say that the most important thing for you financially is your business or your career. Now, I know a lot of the docs that I talk to are business owners, so I'm just going to say your business, right? Now, the reason I think this is really important is, once again, we've been educated by the media that there's some investment, some magic pill out here, right, that's going to make you wealthy. And it's probably being portrayed in the clouds, some area that you don't understand, maybe the stock market, maybe some alternative investment you've never heard of. But if we stop and think for just a minute, if you don't get the business piece right, how much do you actually have to put into investments? Not very much, right? So even if you are getting a really great rate of return over here, if you've got this piece all messed up with the business, then you're probably going to struggle, because a small amount of money put into an investment, even if it gets a really great rate of return, probably isn't going to do very well. And the other thing is, when you invest in things that are out here in the clouds, things that are outside of what you know about, care about, or control, you don't do nearly as well financially, right? And if you stop and think about this, let's say you were going to get 10% off of an investment and you had $10,000 to invest. If you had $10,000 and you got a 10% rate of return, that means that in that investment, you would have earned $1,000 that year, right? And most of us would say that in the stock market or some similar investment, $1,000 is a pretty good rate of return. But if we look back over here at your business, right, the place where you bring a lot of your human life value, your talents, your knowledge, your education, you spend all your time and energy there. Do you think if you spent $10,000 on marketing for your business that you could make more than $1,000 in profit, or that 10% rate of return? Most of the docs that I talk to start laughing when I say this, because they could double or triple their money with this kind of investment, right? So why are we taking money out of our business and handing it over to somebody we don't know or don't know very well to invest in something that most of us have no training in, the stock market or some of these other type of investments, and hoping in a good scenario to get a whole lot lower rate of return than we could get over here in our business, right? So what I do know, and the research shows, is that where wealth is built is inside of your business. And so when I think of your finances, I think of your business as your financial engine, the thing that makes it all go, right? These other investments, if you ever get into those, they might be like the AC or the leather seats or whatever. But at the end of the day, if you want to go somewhere, it's about having an engine, right? So the third thing we're going to talk about today is your number one strategy. And this is what I'm going to share with you. And this probably resides in the area of what you don't know that you don't know. Most people I talk to have not heard about this strategy. We call it cash flow banking. I'm going to write that out here, cash flow banking. And I think of cash flow banking as the supercharged gas for your finances. So here's what I mean by that. Gasoline doesn't do very well if you're not driving well, or if your business isn't a very good engine, right? But if you do have an engine and you do drive well, the gas is going to take everything that you do with your business and everything that you do personally and make all of it more profitable. So it is going to enhance all the things you are already going to do in your life without hardly any complication, okay? So philosophically, I want us to be on the same page about your best asset, your best investment, and your best strategy. So if you need to screenshot, right now is the time to do that. I'm going to give you about 3 seconds, and then I'm going to clear this screen. Okay? So now that we've got that clear, I want to give you a high-level overview of what does this cash flow banking system look like. So on the surface, the 30,000-foot view is this. You make $1, you're going to take and run some of that money through the cash flow banking system. Once the money goes in there, and I want to emphasize this word through, okay? Because most of us have been taught that you like put money into something and it's locked up until age 65 and you can't get to it. With the cash flow banking system, your money's going to be available to you, and the idea is to put money in there, get it working for you multiple different ways, and then take it and do all the things you are already going to do with your business and clinic, or if you have multiple clinics, right? If you want to invest in real estate or whatever else you want to do with your money. With cash flow banking, it's not doing cash flow banking or your business, real estate, outside investments. You get to do cash flow banking and your business and clinic, your real estate, or whatever else you want to do. And then, of course, as these kick off more money, you've got more money to run back through the system, right? So this whole process just takes everything you were already going to do and makes it more profitable. So I'm going to clear that real quick. So go ahead and take your screenshots if you want one, and then we'll move on to the next thing. All right. So I'm going to break down exactly how the cash flow banking system works, okay? Now I'm going to ask you for just a minute to forget everything you've heard about life insurance, because we use life insurance as this process, but it's completely different than any way you've ever seen it. Specifically, we're working with whole life insurance, okay? Now, there's different kinds of life insurance. I won't necessarily get into that, but if we get a chance to talk, I will explain the different types if you'd like. But it's a very specific type of life insurance and a very specific way that we use this that works excellent for docs. So this box represents a life insurance policy. And what most of us know about life insurance is only half the story. We know about the death benefit, which is this bottom portion right here. Okay. Now, what we know about death benefit and what most people do know about life insurance is that when you die, it pays out to your heirs. And it's very effective because it pays out income tax free. So if you're looking to pass money on to your heirs, life insurance is about the most effective way there is to do that, because Uncle Sam doesn't get a huge chunk of it. Now, if you ask most people, even most life insurance agents, that's all they'll really talk about is the death benefit. But here's the problem. If you were going to be able to enjoy a financial vehicle when you're dead or when you're alive, which would you prefer? If you're like me, you would prefer to do that while you're living, right? And what nobody ever talks about is this top box up here, which is the living benefit of life insurance, and it's known as cash value. Now, if you've never heard about cash value or you don't know very much about it, there's a couple of good reasons. The first one is if you go down to your local life insurance person and say, hey, I'd like to get some life insurance, they're going to ask you, how much money do you have? And they're going to allocate as much of that as they can directly into death benefit. So they're going to give you the biggest death benefit they possibly can. But the problem is, by doing that, two things happen. The first thing is they're minimizing your cash value, right? So the part that you can use while you're alive is diminished as much as possible. And also, guess what life insurance agents get paid on? The money that goes into the death benefit. That's known as your premium. And your premium's like the cost of insurance, right? So that's what they get paid on. The more death benefit they sell you, the more money they make. Well, guess what salespeople do? They sell you what makes the money. The problem with that is they're doing you, in my opinion, a huge injustice. So what we do is we actually structure this completely different, almost totally opposite. And what we do is we take as much as we can away from the death benefit, and we put it directly up here into the cash value. So that does two things. The first thing is it minimizes your fees. In fact, it cuts them by about 67%. So all of a sudden, life insurance just got a whole lot cheaper for you. The second thing is it begins building cash value for you immediately. And if you want to think about it, cash value is like having a savings account inside of your life insurance policy. And it's kind of like a supercharged savings account. And I'll share with you why in just 1 second. Well, so one thing we have to be aware of is because this is life insurance, there are some rules around it and how much we can put into cash value. The long and the short of it is money that's in cash value gets tax benefits. So there's a limit. There's kind of a dotted line right at the top of this box here that's known as the modified endowment contract limit. Now, you don't need to know much about that, except that if we stuff too much cash in here relative to the death benefit, it becomes modified. They no longer treat it as life insurance, and we lose our tax advantages. We don't want to do that. So as a simple rule of thumb, it's about a 2-to-1 ratio, meaning for every dollar that we put toward death benefit, we can put about $2 into this supercharged savings account called cash value. So that might sound interesting and whatever, but you're saying, hey, Derick, why do I want money in cash value? I've got a bank account, I've got a checking account, maybe I've got a money market account. Why cash value? What makes it so special? And why do I want any of this insurance stuff anyway? Okay, so let me share with you why this makes so much sense. Inside of the cash value account, there's a couple of very important things that happen. The first thing is that just like a bank account, your money is liquid. Okay, that means you can get to it in 3 to 7 days. So it's not like, hey, I just ran out of gas, I need money for my car, liquid, but it is if you're going to do a marketing campaign, buy a new clinic, get some new equipment, buy a car, remodel your house, anything that's a major purchase, you'll be able to utilize this cash for. And I'm going to show you how to do that in a way that makes it incredibly profitable for you. Okay. Now I bring this up because liquidity is one of the most important things in business. If you have access to cash, you can take advantage of opportunities and you can avoid when things get tough, right? Like you don't have stress, you don't get freaked out, you don't find yourself in a 2008 situation where people were losing their house because they didn't have access to cash. So being liquid minimizes the downside when adversity comes along, and it also maximizes your opportunities. So I think it's very vital that you stay liquid. The problem is as a business owner, you kind of have two choices. You can either be liquid or you can get your money working for you. With life insurance, we get to do both. Because within this liquid account, we're going to earn a guaranteed 4% rate of return on our money in cash value. Now that 4% is contractually guaranteed by the life insurance company. So it's written right into the agreement. So in a worst case scenario, you'll get that 4%. Now, when you compare that to a savings account, most people inside of a savings account are getting less than 0.25%, or at best, maybe 0.5%. But I would say most people, it's less than 0.25% in their savings account. So based on that, this is about 10 times what you would ordinarily earn inside of a savings account. But here's what's really cool. On top of that 4%, you're also going to get a dividend. So most of us don't know what a dividend is, so I'm going to tell you a dividend is like profit sharing. And what the profit that's being shared is, the insurance companies that we work with are mutual companies. And what that means is a mutual company is not traded on the stock exchange. You know, it's not part of the stock market. When you buy a policy, you become an owner in the company. So when the insurance company makes money, you make money. They share some of that profitability with you. Right now, the companies that I'm, writing business with, it's a little over 2% on a dividend, right? So when you take this 4% plus the 2%, you're somewhere in the neighborhood right now with the best companies of about a 6%. Now, the dividend isn't guaranteed, but the companies I work with have all paid for at least the past 100 years in a row. So Great Depression, savings and loan crisis, world wars, all that stuff. These companies are in the business of people living and dying, and that hasn't changed since human beings have been around. So they know their numbers. So it's a very safe bet to say that that's going to continue, but even if it doesn't, the 4% is guaranteed. Okay. Now, in addition to that, I mentioned tax advantages. Now, if you're like me, you've probably heard, yes, bad spelling here. You probably heard the term tax advantages a million times, and every time someone tells you about it, it means something different. So let me explain what I mean by that. When you make $1, you're going to pay your taxes on it, right? Just like you ordinarily would with anything. And then the money goes into the cash value. Once the money's inside of the cash value, it's going to grow tax deferred. Now, tax deferred means you would pay taxes on it later. But if you do it the way that I'm about to show you, it goes from being tax deferred to where you can utilize the money tax-free. So I want to take just a minute to emphasize how important this is, because it's easy to gloss over it. If you don't know, taxes are the single biggest cost in your life. I know, you probably thought it was your kids, but it's actually taxes. Because if you're making much money, your tax bracket is probably somewhere in the 25 to 45% rate of return. I'm sorry, not rate of return, but tax rate, right? So 25 to 45% of every dollar that you make is going to Uncle Sam. If we can get dollars earning for you here inside of this supercharged savings account, and you don't have to pay taxes on those, that is a massive swing. If you just stop and think about it, if you have $1 million inside of a taxable account at retirement, by the time you pay the taxes on that, you might only end up with $667,000 of it, right? You pay 33% in taxes. If you have untaxable dollars and you can spend $1 million, that's $1 million. That's an extra $333,000 you would get to spend in retirement. That's 50% more money just because of the tax advantages of something like this, right? And I'm not talking about any particular plan here that this is it, but a lot of qualified plans, you got to pay taxes on the way out, right? So what happens here is while your money's staying liquid, it's also working for you multiple ways. One, it's earning the 4%. Two, it's earning a dividend. Three, it's saving you taxes. And the fourth way is, I'm moving this over because of my picture here. The fourth way is it grows the death benefit. And what that means is when we spend this $1 to pay for the insurance, that buys us a death benefit, right? Our initial death benefit. But as we contribute these extra $2 up here for every $1 down here, it buys additional insurance. We use a provision called paid up additions. And what that means is it buys paid up additional insurance. So if this is your regular death benefit, every time you pay that extra money in to the cash value, it buys a little extra insurance and a little bit more. And every month or every year as you make those payments, it builds up the amount of insurance. And what that means is if you're building up money in cash value, let's say you pass away without getting to spend it, it's going to get paid out with the death benefit. Now, if you go and spend all this cash value down, then those bricks will get erased as you use them, and whatever's left will go to your heirs. So bottom line, either you get to spend the money or your heirs get to spend the money. Okay? So If you have any questions on this, please write them down and go ahead and do your screenshots real quick. I'll wait, and then we'll move on to how do you actually use this policy in your life. Okay, so 3, 2, 1, and poof, there it goes. Okay, so the question becomes, I'm building up cash inside of a life insurance policy. That's great. How does this work with real life for you as a doc, right? And why is this so important? And like I said, as a doc, one of the things that I think is important is, as you make money, in a more traditional sense, you have to decide, do I want it to be liquid, or do I want it to earn for me, whether that's saving taxes or actually earning for you? With life insurance, we get to do both with whole life insurance, okay? So here's how this works. This is your cash value account. And as you pay into it over time and it grows, you have money you can utilize. Okay? And let's say you want to use this for a piece of equipment for your office, right? Something that's going to make you some money. So you want to utilize your cash value for that. So the first thing we do is we go to the life insurance company, and rather than withdrawing our money, we're going to take a loan against our policy. And what that means is your money stays in here. They kind of like earmark it, right? And they say, okay, that money's been spoken for, but we're not pulling it out. We're going to give you a loan, and we'll keep your money inside of the policy. So let's say that was $50,000. You take the $50,000, you buy the equipment, and it starts producing income for you. Now, most people would say, great, leave that piece of equipment paid for, collect the cash flow, and you're more profitable. You got more money to spend or do whatever you want with it. We would say that there's a more productive way to do that, because once the money's in here, it's kind of like equity inside of the equipment. It stops working for you in multiple ways. So what we want to do is we always want to keep your dollars doing more than one job, or as many jobs as they can. So what I would say is, instead of just taking all of this as profit, take some of the cash flow and pay yourself back just like you would have paid a bank, right? And let's say if you got an equipment loan, it would have cost you 8%. I would say pay yourself back plus 8%. Now, a lot of people stop me and they say, Derick, whoa, why would I pay myself interest? That doesn't make any sense. And so I want to explain this to you because, as you guys know, in the health industry, it's not the obvious lie that's dangerous for people. It's the subtle lie, right? It's the thing that's not so easy to see or appears to be true on the surface, but actually isn't. One of the things I know about money is it's little changes that make big results in the long run. And so this is one of those. So if this is your money over here, this is you, and this is your business over here. If you were to do a loan for somebody for their business, would you expect them to pay you interest? Well, most of us would. If you lent your doc buddy some money for a piece of equipment, you would expect them to pay you back, right? Plus some interest. And also, if your business was going to borrow money from anybody, would you expect to pay it back with interest? So if you borrow from a bank or a friend or a family member, you expect to pay it back with interest, right? So we're not asking you or your business to do anything different than you ordinarily would. But here's why this makes such a big difference. If this line represents $0, when we go to buy a piece of equipment, you kind of have two choices. The first one is you go negative $50,000, and then over time, you make payments till you get back to zero and the piece of equipment's paid for, right? We all know that. But if you borrow that money while you're making the payments back, what are you also paying? You're paying interest, right? So there's a cost to buying that equipment and borrowing the money. We all know that. right? So a lot of people say, I don't want to do that. I'm going to pay cash instead. So what they do is they build up the cash first, and then they pay cash for the piece of equipment. Now that seems like a good idea, except for this. Let's say it takes you 3 years to save up the money. What is your money not doing while it's sitting in a savings account building up so you can pay cash for the equipment? It's not earning, right? So you're missing out on the interest you could have earned over those 3 years while you're building up that cash. So if you look at it this way, you start to realize that everything we buy, whether it's a piece of equipment or our house or a car or whatever, we're either paying interest or we're missing out on interest. What this system does over here is while you're building up money, you're getting that 4% plus a dividend tax-free, so your dollars are building up. Then when you take them and you buy the equipment, you start paying yourself back plus interest, so that the money that's sitting here in equity is earning for you. But instead of it earning a negative 8%, like if you paid the bank, it's actually earning a positive 8% for you as it gets paid back into your cash value and can then again grow for you tax-free until you have the next opportunity, whatever that might be, and use that to pay yourself back. So what happens here is you're capturing the opportunity cost of your dollars, so your dollars are growing for you in multiple ways all the time. Now we know that inside the policy, our dollars are working for us the 4 ways, but if we do this, we also get a 5th way, right, where it's going to build cash flow because we bought this piece of equipment, plus a 6th way where we're earning interest on our money just like a bank would, and the money goes back into our account to grow for us so we can do it again. So what this does is it captures all the opportunity cost of our dollars all the time. Now I want to take this and go big picture for you and for just 1 second here. If you realize that once you start building up some cash value over here, all the loans in your life that you've paid interest on up to this point and would be paying interest on in the future, so I'm talking about auto loans, right? Your mortgages, your any credit cards, any equipment, your kids' college, your kids getting getting married, any of that stuff that people borrow money from, all that interest is going to the banks right now. What if we could reallocate all that interest that you've been paying to financial institutions your whole life so that it started going back into an account with your name on it? And it was totally liquid, so you can use it for your business. For most people, that's a 6 or probably a 7-figure swing in your lifetime of extra money that you get to use that's not going to help build those skyscrapers downtown. It's going back into your pocket and your business so that you can grow and live better. Does that make sense? Good. So go ahead and snapshot this if you want. And I want to talk with you a little bit about, like, where does the money come from to fund this, right? Especially if you're already putting money into an IRA or 401k or saving it somewhere else. Okay, so here's how this works. You make money and you got to live on some of it, right? And I want to highly advocate that this isn't about like tightening your belt to the point where you starve yourself to death. I want you to live big. I want you to have fun now, but I want you to also save some money. And I believe that systematic savings is the most important thing you can do. We think you should save in a perfect world 10 to 20% of your income. And the first place that 10 to 20% of income should go is into an emergency account. Okay, so an emergency account is if the car breaks down, if the kids need braces, if someone has to, go to the hospital or get sick or whatever, that there's money for that. It helps you to be a better husband or wife, a better parent, better business owner, all of those things, because your mindset is clear. Remember, we talked about you being the asset. And the idea here is the more confident and powerful we can make you be, the more money you can earn, the better human you can be, the more healing you can bring to the world, right? So the emergency fund is about that. It's about you being safe and being at your best. And we think you should have 3 to 6 months worth of expenses in a savings account. So if it costs $10,000 a month to feed your family, pay your bills, just the bare bones stuff, then you should have $30,000 to $60,000 saved up so that your mindset is good. And if something does happen, you're going to be okay. The problem with the savings account is it doesn't earn for you. It doesn't save you taxes. The only thing it is it's liquid and it's available, right? So once you've got that 3 to 6 months, we let this bucket overflow into a better savings account, and that's your cash flow banking account. So you keep saving your money into here, and then this just pays into the cash flow banking account, and you start saving your 10 to 20% there. Now, for a lot of people, this cash flow banking account takes the place of a 401k, an IRA, a SEP, all those kinds of things. Because here's the thing with those. Most people do those plans because you're going to pay taxes later, right? Here's the problem with paying taxes later, in my opinion. First off, if we do this right, I hope that you're in a higher tax bracket somewhere down the road than you are now. The idea is to create financial abundance and financial wealth for you. So do you want to pay taxes when they're going to be cheaper for you, or when you're in a higher tax bracket? For a lot of people, it makes sense to pay the taxes now while they're cheaper. I mean, we don't love paying taxes, but if you know you got to pay them at some point, you may as well do it when it's most affordable. Which brings up my second point. If you had to guess, do you think taxes are going up or going down? If you think taxes are going up in the future, it absolutely makes sense to pay the taxes now. If you think they're going down in the future, then maybe you have an argument, because the only way that tax deferral really makes sense is if you're going to pay less tax in the future than you would now, and you're going to have to lock your money up till you're 59 and a half. So for a lot of people, that money gets allocated here as well. And then you use this for your business, right? Or for real estate investments. Or you can use this to buy your next car, play the bank for yourself. Yeah, that's a beautiful Roadster right there. And then you pay yourself back into the account using the banking system. And you can do this over and over and over to continue to grow your cash flow banking system, continually having more and more money that you get to utilize for all these things and collecting interest that you would have already paid along the way. Now, here's what's really cool about this. If it's important to you to pass on a legacy to your family, you can actually build up life insurance or put money into a trust. And then the trust can create this system for your heirs, for your family members, right? So it might buy a policy on each of your kids. And this is something that the Rockefellers did, and I'm going to give you a chance to download our book that talks about this. But the Rockefellers bought policies on each of their kids. And each of the kids then had their own cash flow banking policy that the trust paid for, that filled up with money. And then the kids were able to utilize this and pay themselves back when they wanted to start a business or get their education or buy a car or get married or whatever. And all that money is going back into an account that they get to utilize throughout their entire lifetime. Can you imagine if you didn't have to have paid all that interest that you've paid out, but instead that went back into an account with your name on it? You can set that up for your family members so that they get to utilize that. Now, if you're afraid of building trust fund babies, the way that we teach you to set up the trust, and I have an attorney that's an expert in these types of things, is we set up a board. And this board of advisors, I'm on one of these board of advisors, the board of advisors helps to approve anything that the kids are using the money for. So they don't get to, go on a gambling binge or spend it all on spring break. There's a directive that tells the board how this money can be utilized and what kinds of things your heirs can utilize it for, all the productive things or things you think that you want them to be able to use it for in their lifetime. And then what happens is when this heir passes away, because the trust was paying for it, the money goes back into the trust with the death benefit. And now there's money to buy the policy on the next generation. And the Rockefellers have been doing this for 6 generations, all the way down. And it's about 150 people right now that the trust is supporting multiple generations later. So that's how you can use this to perpetuate legacy. Now, I know I've just covered a ton of stuff, and so I want to take a minute here. Christy, you asked me to kind of stop at about the 45-minute mark so that we can answer any questions. So let's do that if you're open to it.
Yes, absolutely. So if you have any questions, now would be a great time to submit those, and we will get our friend Derick here to answer those for you. And I'm sure that there's no question that is too crazy, because bless his heart, I text him and call him with questions all the time.
I get a lot of that, because the thing with this system is it's so flexible. You can use it a lot of different ways. And so people do come up with things. Can I do this? Can I do that? Could I use this for my mom or my kids or whatever? There are a lot of really neat things you can do. What I've shown you here is like the basics of how it works. There's a million different ways, and there's a bunch of books out there, and the tax stuff is not in the gray area. It's definitely black and white. So, this is all legitimate stuff. And I guess I should say that, the reason most people haven't heard much about this is it actually used to be much more prevalent. But when the 401k caught fire and became this neat thing, and companies got a hold of it, what happened was companies transferred the risk from pensions, what they used to give, to the stock market. And they used to use life insurance in a lot of cases to provide a pension because it was stable. But they thought, we don't want to carry that risk. We'll just give it to you. You can go gamble with your own money in the stock market. And if it doesn't work out, it's not up to us. And so that's why that got popularized, is because companies didn't want to take on the risk of having to take care of you in retirement. They decided to hand that to you, and the 401k and the IRA is a much better vehicle for them to transfer that risk to you. So
absolutely. And I would highly recommend, and Derick will share with you shortly how to set up an appointment to do a one-on-one conversation with him on how this would work specifically.
Yeah.
Your family. And I will tell you that it is truly an eye-opening experience. There were so many things that my husband and I had planned and talked about in retirement, or things that we thought would have to wait into retirement. And, Derick was able to really show us that it really wasn't as far away as we thought. Retirement is plenty far away. We're not in any hurry to do that. But a lot of the things that we thought that we wouldn't be able to do until then, we'll be able to do much, much sooner. So we're super excited about that.
Yes, I think it's going to be exciting. I'm excited for you. I'm writing down here the site where you can go to set up a time to talk, because I'm sure everybody's situation is different, right? What I'm showing you here is kind of the generic straight and narrow road. But if you go to biglifefinancial.com/financial adjustment, right? I bring this up because all my docs say, what's the best way to experience chiropractic? Get adjusted. Well, the best way to experience what we can help you with financially is to set up a session and experience it for yourself. For a lot of my docs, there are things tax-wise, like tax rebates, that most of them aren't filing for, that are just money on the table. There's strategies like this where docs don't know where to put their money. Should I put it in the stock market? Should I save it for my business? Should I be doing something else? I don't have a regular way to save, How do I get off this financial treadmill? We can help you with those things, because we've seen it. I've worked with over 1,000 docs in the last 10 years, and we've seen this work over and over again. And as we like to say, we like to remove the financial subluxations. So be sure to go to biglifefinancial.com/financial-adjustment, and you can find it there.
I also just put the link in the chat log and send it to everyone. Like I said, It is an educational experience, an eye-opening one to sit down with Derick one-on-one and talk about your family's personal, financial, and future goals. And even if you have some stress thinking about the future, because we all do, like, are we going to have enough money for retirement?
Sure.
Are we able to do all the things that we want to do? Are we going to feel like being able to do those things because, it's so far away? It was, like I said, it was a huge relief for my husband and I to go through that process and realize that a lot of the things that we were waiting on, we really didn't have to wait that long for after all. So really
Yeah.
encourage you to take care of that. If you did not read Garrett's book that he recommended last month, What Would the Rockefellers Do? I would encourage you also to read that book. It does not go into as much detail, but it really does talk about the what Derick is explaining to everyone today. But it's a fantastic book. I loved it. I met Garrett last November, and I ordered the book. Actually, I ordered a couple of books because I'm kind of a junkie. And then I'm on the phone with Derick one day, and he was like, "No, read this one first." And I'm like, "Okay, let me read this one first." By the time I finished it, 24 hours later, I'm like texting him, going, "Can we get on the phone? I have so many questions. Like, I'm so excited about this process." And that's exactly what it does. It just makes you excited about the future.
Yeah, and when you go to biglifefinancial.com financial-adjustment, there's a link there where you can download the book for free. So Garrett and I work together. We worked together we've been business partners in one way, shape, or form for about the last 20 years. So we've learned a lot of this together, and we have our different ways of presenting it, but we are ideologically very aligned.
Very much so. I would agree with that. And if you remember, if you were on Garrett's webinar, I keep saying last month. That wasn't last month. That was in April. It just feels like that was last month because I can't believe it's June. He talked about Derick, and we set it up so that people could schedule a meeting with Derick. And again, I told you then, this life-changing. I just felt like I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't tell you. It legit is life-changing. And I'm not getting paid to endorse Derick or Garrett. I just happen to be big fans and can only speak to the impact that they've had on my own family. I think I told you this, Derick. My child watches YouTube videos with Garrett in it now.
Does she?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome.
When we get big, I'm like, that's right. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. We start early at my house.
Well, it's funny because people villainize money, but the truth is, it's kind of like a paradox or an oxymoron in the sense that people villainize money, but we also put people up on a pedestal who do really well with money. And I think what it comes down to is we want people to be successful, but we don't want them to be successful at other people's expense, right? We don't like people who have become successful by taking advantage of others. And we really subscribe to the belief of become wealthy by creating massive value in the world and then letting people compensate you for it. And I think, with kids and everything, if we can help them to get the message that it's about contribution as opposed to take, it's about how do you create so much value in the world that people want to exchange? They want to trade their money for what you're doing for them, because what you're doing for them is so much more valuable, which is exactly what docs do, right? You trade helping people get healthy for money. And when you come at it from an area or a direction of contribution and exchange, not just giving it away so that you're broke and everybody else is benefiting, but so that everybody's better for it, that's really the key to success for everyone.
I couldn't agree more. And I will say that, I told you after one of our first million conversations, and we started talking about, the philanthropic efforts of our family and what we wanted to do. We literally had a family meeting, the 5-year-old, the 12-year-old, and mom and dad, and talked about what are the things that we're passionate about, what are the things that we want to support, chiropractic research, education, secondary education for foster children, things like that, the things that were really important to my family. So this opens up really great family conversations because people don't talk about money. It's very taboo to talk about money, but the reality is our kids to know about money, know about it responsibly, and you have to teach them young because they're
Yeah.
not learning this kind of stuff in school. They're learning how to pass tests, which is great because one of my kids is going to chiropractic college too. So.
Well, and when you set up something like this, when you teach the kids how to use this, they start to learn about money. It's a really great way to facilitate them learning and being responsible and working within a budget, but also how to create wealth for themselves. It really does facilitate a great conversation for them.
Couldn't agree more. And I will say this webinar is recorded, so you will get a link to the recording in about 15 to 20 minutes after we wrap this up. Go back and access it later tonight or later this week. Sit down with your spouse and have them watch this with you. My husband went through the books with me, and and in the conversations with Derick, most of the time he was at work or in a meeting and he couldn't be. But we have recordings and we're able to talk about it after the fact. And this is the easiest way. I love your little stick mans and how you talk about this process, because visually it makes so much more sense than just reading it on paper.
Sure.
So absolutely share this with your spouse and your family and let them in on, what are you thinking about? Let's plan for the future and make it a family thing.
Yep.
It's huge impact on you and your family, their future. Or like I told Derick after our second or third conversation, I was like, wow, this just changed everything for so many generations forward. And I couldn't be more excited. So just a reminder, next week is our CA Masterclass with Miss May Bagnell. And I am so excited to have her on. She's a very good friend. I've missed her dearly because she has been in Paris with her husband celebrating her anniversary. So we're going to start on time, even though I'm pretty sure that we're going to log in 30, 40 minutes early so that she can talk to me about her trip and we can catch up outside of just text messages. And Lord knows those pictures are beautiful. And then the next week, we're going to have Dr. Chris Calarco on here, who talks about how he grew his PI practice and the financial impact that it had on his business by doing focusing on that area of practice as well. And I mean, you already know what you're going to do with the money as you grow your business. So all of these are connected. So make sure everybody's watching. Derick, thank you so much for being on the webinar today.
My pleasure. Absolutely loved it. Love to share this stuff.
I know you do. And we will have Derick back again in the future, and Garrett as well. And hopefully our paths will cross and we'll get to see each other at some event, some weekend very, very soon.
I hope so.
All right. Bye, everybody.